us is also a man who is no stranger. He's back. Yes, we're talking about TV talk show host Stephan Reis, and he's once again with us. Happy New Year and a pleasant good evening to you, sir.
Happy New Year to you, Mikey, and all of your viewers, and everybody over there at Gael. Yeah, man. So,
the last time I had you on, a lot has taken place. We're at state of emergency now. Dr. Rowley is stepping down as Prime Minister. He's being replaced by Stuart Young. Diego Martin West doesn't want to go with Dr. Emery Brown. There's changes to the coat of arms. Rowley said police officers hiding in the police station, and President Trump is officially in the office. So it's been quite a lot taking place. No vacation for political development. You know, looking at all that's taking place here, and I spoke to some people earlier today, and they were saying this, they've reached a point where there's a lot of political fatigue. They want it in the morning. They want to go to the polls as soon as possible. They want to make that change. Are we seeing an administration that is simply just biding time?
Biding time. No, I don't think so. I don't think the PNM is biding time. I think the PNM, and people should know this by now, anybody that following politics in Trinidad and Tobago, the PNM is a well-oiled political machine. All right? The election machinery is second to none in the world, in my opinion. And I think that they're just making the strategic moves that they believe they need to make at this point in time going into this election. And they're going to take their time doing it, and they're entitled to, right? The changeover with the Prime Minister stepping down and announcing that he's no longer going to move forward as the political leader and enter into the election, and the change of Minister Young coming in was a very interesting one. I myself would have liked to be a fly on the wall in that meeting. But the PNM is doing what the PNM needs to do, and I think change is part of it. I think a lot of people in the country, from a voter standpoint, was looking to see where the changes would come, because we can't do the same thing over and over and expect a different result, right? Now, on the leadership change, whether Minister Young is going to be a good political leader or not, a good prime minister or not, is yet to be seen. We can only judge him based on, I suppose, his performance in the past, and he will have things to defend. I mean, if we look back to the pandemic, Minister Young was the national security minister that took the decision then to block people, Trinidad nationals from coming back into the country. At a time, I'm sure you remember the whole situation with Barbados and their Attorney General and everything that went on there. And we had people that wanted to come back home and they could not come back home.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
We also had the situation with the divers, where he was the Minister of Energy and Energy Affairs, and he was the man who was in charge and would have been the point person to make important decisions on that tragic incident that occurred. And, you know, my thing is, you kind of measure people, not kind of, but you have to measure people when they're back against the wall and the pressure is on. It's in moments of disasters that leaders emerge. And he will be, you know, I mean, he will be weighed and measured based on his performance in many areas, but at this point, you know, those two just to name a few.
No, I just spoke to PNM activist Barry Garcia, and he was very much brutal in the sense of his honesty. He said, listen, it's not going to be an easy sell, but that's the job they have, that's the task that they have, to sell this man to the electorate. He doesn't know if they have enough time, but the fact of the matter is that everything that has occurred, where it is that we've seen so much incompetence, Mr. Young was part and parcel of the cabinet. He was there. And when he recused himself, it wasn't for the interest of anyone as a private citizen, but it was to make sure there was no conflict of interest as far as business interests. So what is there to sell? What is there to say that, you know, we have to look at a track record of someone who simply has been selected and not elected, who has shown, and according to what my good friend Ken Ali wrote, there's almost sure to mean the gulf between rich and poor would continue to widen, and business fat cats would increase their historically high profits. Rowley infamously said that business must be encouraged to make more money, even as the poor got poor under his watch. So a select few control about 80% of the national wealth. And he goes on to say that Stuart Young is expected to be a big business prime minister.
Well, I don't know. Well, okay, when they talk about Minister Young is going to be a hard sell, let me take away all the hocus pocus layers. There is a reason why he's going to be a hard sell, and if I'm being frankly, as honest as I could be, it is because he's not of African descent. All right, and I say this because Trinidad and Tobago's politics has been rooted in the ethnic narrative and divide, as PNM being the political party of the African voter and the UNC being the political party of the Indo-Trinidadian voter. And this is the first time that we've seen somebody at the helm that is not of African descent. And I think that forms part of the cell that Mr. Garcia may be talking about more than anything else. It's how is the voter base going to accept Minister Young as being the leader of this party that is perceived to be the Afro-Trinidadian party. So that change alone, from an ethnic standpoint, you can look at it both ways. They could look at it as a hard sell if you bring that part of the conversation into it. But then again, they could also sell it in a very smart way and say, listen, we are for, we for all ethnicities, and it doesn't matter who runs the party, we're picking somebody based on merit, and they could sell it from that point. However they decide to sell it, they will have to defend a lot of things, as will the opposition. So, the opposition have, make no mistake about it. I know we're talking about the PNM and
No, go right ahead.
A lot of, yeah. So we're talking a lot of decisions that were made under the PNM where Dr. Rowley was at the helm and, Minister Young and most of the people I believe that is part of this cabinet is going to be back in that cabinet if he is elected. So, how do we move forward as a country in making decisions? And I think we have to tear away all the ethnic divide, stop talking all the race in politics. And Trump said it, when Trump in his inauguration speech, he said, listen, I want to be a peacemaker and I want to lead an America that is colorblind. If people must be supported, elected or selected based on merit and their ability to do the job. And for this entire 9 going into 10-year term, a lot of people will say that a lot of square pegs going round holes as it relates to certain positions that people holding in government and certain decisions that are being made. Fitzgerald Hines, I think, could be pointed out as the chief in that department because a lot of people see him as a failure of a Minister of National Security, given the amount of murders that the country has seen over the last 3 years. Now, and I want to make this clear, it's not about murders being out of control over the last 3 years. We've had a problem with crime for probably over about 2 decades now. All right? But the point is that it escalated to unseen levels within the last 3 years. I think we crossed 600, then we went 5 something, which was the second highest, and then now we hit 620 something?
Yeah.
Which made it the highest ever in the history of the country. And we come down to the end of the year, and Minister Hines and Minister Young hold a press conference and announce the state of emergency. But since the state of emergency has been declared, and I made this point on the program the other day, I really don't know what kind of state of emergency the country is really under. Because the police saying they hold X amount of people, but we're not seeing who get charged or how many people get charged. You could hold as many people as you want, but if you're not going to charge them for something, and you have something solid to hold them on, then we're back at square one at the end of the 3-month period when this, because they got the extension when the SOE ends.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we had a murder a day.
Yeah, you're right.
We had a murder a day under this SOE. Just this morning I read it in the papers where, again, somebody went up on Facebook Marketplace to buy a teeter, and they left somewhere in South and went them over. And they were robbed.
And that's happening on a daily.
50,000 and I think new. So
you're right.
It seems like, from the criminal element standpoint, it's still business as usual, but just to a lesser extent. And we got to stop looking at crime using the narrative of statistics. Well, yesterday we recorded the 22nd murder for the year, but it's 15 less than last year. But we are under a state of emergency, and one a day is still too much. And I just want to make this point. In Belmont, over a 1 week period, we had 5 people get gunned down in Belmont. So if you're under a state of emergency and you know what you're doing and you have a plan, and the police have these extra powers, okay? And the government is trying to take back control of the streets from these gangs with these high-powered rifles. When the first killing take place in Belmont, you don't think the police should have locked it down? So how 4 people can get gunned down in Belmont within a 1 week period in the middle of a SOE? It's 5 people get killed in Belmont.
Yeah, you're right about that. As it stands now, we're at 23 murders. But you raised a point a little earlier there as far as the colorblind and dealing with things based on merit. Now, that sounds interesting on paper. But if you look at the culture that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago, who's going to grab the bull by the horns and change that status quo and give us that fair equity across the board? Now, it's all good and well if we can get it on merit. Now, if you and I could simply take some sort of state land and pretend that we're going to do some agricultural project on it, and in a matter of time, we have it turned over to homestead, and then from homestead, we have it turned over to residential, and then from residential, we have it turned over to commercial, the very same state land, and we get it in our names, our company names, and then we get a letter that states that whatever we intend to build on this property, the government will have no problem renting it from us, and we take it to the bank, we get finance. I would be happy if everyone across the board could have such a great privilege and opportunity. But that's not the reality that we have here in Trinidad and Tobago. We don't. We have those who have and those who simply do not have, and the middle class has been wiped out, and most of us are simply trying to keep our head above the economic water. Now, taking all of that in consideration, I mean, you're talking about a big paradigm shift that the people are still not ready for, because they're still conditioned to believing that, hey, we have to wait, we don't work, we work for the government doesn't work for us, and whatever they met that's given out, we have to accept it.
Yeah. Well, on everything that you said there, right, with people keeping their head above water, I mean, just look, the PNM is going to have an uphill task. Public servants, 4% in the negotiations. And some of the unions accepted it with certain conditions attached to it, but I don't think public servants are happy with the 4% increase that they got, and they're not going to be happy with any negotiation that takes place moving forward before the election. Because, I mean, if they add on 2%, 3%, 4%, it really don't make a difference in your bottom line figure in terms of where cost of living is, right? So we know that you're going to the grocery. I just come from the grocery. Basic items, $400 and something.
Yeah.
So we know that cost of living has gone up. We know that public servants have not gotten a proper increase. We know that a lot of our services are suffering. The fire service, there was just an investigation into the fire that took place with the late Lisa Morris Julian situation and the children. And, rest in peace and condolences to the family, as I mentioned that. It was a tragic incident. And a lot of people, when I on television every morning, they say, but Stephan, look how many people got trapped in their houses and died from a fire, and there was no investigation. So why this one? Why do we have to reach the point where it has to be somebody or something that's personal to us to actually hear? If you understand what I'm saying, and that goes for the wider society too. We will see crime going on. People will pick up the papers, listen to the news, go to social media, see all the murders and things and all the little posts that people sending out. This one get killed, that one get killed, and everybody go about their business like it's business as usual until it reach home by them. So it's only when it's somebody that you know, somebody close to you, and they are the victim of something, then you are concerned. And people in Trinidad and Tobago have to start being concerned regardless of who it is. We have to bring back that kind of unity in the country.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
And the politicians have to drive that energy to the public. The police service is crying out for resources. The fire service saying they don't have resources. Remember when the firefighter followed the fire truck in the corner?
Yeah, that went viral. Yeah.
And then they showed you a picture and it was a plastic bottle holding the door or something to that effect.
Yeah.
So we know that so where is the question is, where is the money going?
Yeah, but Stephan, we were told that Keith Scotland came in there to deal with resources. That was his job, to specifically deal with the resources that the TTPS needs.
Yes. And since Keith Scotland has been there, people have to be honest. Have we seen any real impact to say that there has been a decline in criminal activity in Trinidad and Tobago? And the answer is no. So my point is, every year, and this is how people have to start holding governments accountable, regardless if it's PNM, UNC, NTA, Michaela Pandey, Hope, it doesn't matter which political party it is and who they represent, because any political party represents all of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. But it doesn't make a difference, because you have to hold them accountable, Trinidadian people, and I say Trinidadian people specifically, because I believe Tobagonian people different, right? They will hold you accountable. Trinidadian people need to start asking questions. Every year, your Ministry of National Security gets billions of dollars. If we go back and we check over the last 10 years, or 15 years to be fair, from 2010 to 2025, the billions of dollars allocated to the National Security Ministry, why do we have the crime problem that we have right now? What is going on? This morning there was an article in the paper. We have to check ourselves as well as a society.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There was an article in the paper, and I want people to listen to this carefully. Police went on an exercise. A 14-year-old boy was held with ammunition and was held being associated with a gang and so on and so forth. And I asked the question, this boy is 14 years old. 10 years ago, he would have been 4 years old. What is happening in society and the community that he is growing up in, the family structure around him, that a 4-year-old 10 years ago could be a gangster at 14 and 10 years later?
Yeah, and you say unknown to the parents that he had this in his possession?
Well, I didn't see anything in the article I read in the news. It didn't say anything about the parents. It just gave the police report that they held him. He's 14 years old, along with 2 other minors who also held on the operation.
Yeah.
But he saw the police and he started to run. He dropped a blue bandana and he started to run. And when they catch up with him, they find ammunition and take on him.
Yeah, but these things, Kevin, I mean, Stephan, you know, these things don't happen overnight. They don't start overnight. I mean, when you and I were going to school, we couldn't bring home even somebody's pencil or eraser. But here it is, you have these students who are just simply disrespectful. They're fighting with teachers, physical fights, big brawls.
Yeah,
I mean, you have other students cheering it on because it seems normal. And you ask yourself, I mean, what has happened to our society, really and truly, that has given these individuals that sense of confidence that they can go about acting like noble savages?
Exactly, and leadership has a lot to do with it. The way that politicians talk, the things that they say on a platform, the message that they send. You understand? If you are going to be, as a leader, disrespectful to a particular group or a particular gender, let's say women, right? Expect that men in society are going to treat women the same way, because the leader, it's coming from a leadership position. So leaders have to start taking responsibility, and they have to start leading from the front, okay, in a responsible manner, to bring this country back to where it's supposed to be. Trinidad is supposed to be Trinidad and Tobago, supposed to be the superpower of the Caribbean. The superpower of the Caribbean. Yet I have somebody went to the hospital today and they couldn't get basic medication. Where the money going? All that money can't be spending. And taxpayers don't know where it's going. And then when they can't account for it, or they have a shortcoming in some sector, they come into taxi living daylight out of the citizen. It cannot work like that. Why taking a salary increase and their pension too. It can't work like that.
And I agree with you. And on for both sides, for us as citizens, again, and as far as the leaders, the politicians, you can't have politicians saying that the voice of the people is the voice of God, but you conveniently hear that voice. And you cannot have citizens who simply make noise only when they're inconvenienced. If they have to line up for something, they make there should be more tellers, there should be more cashiers. But when the ordeal is over, they just go about their business and forget about what took place. It's like, all right, I get through now, so it's okay. And that's the kind of behavior. And I always tell people, this is the question that we need to ask ourselves. Am I the citizen I need to be for the country that I want?
Exactly. And citizens have to start taking ownership for their actions. That is the one thing that I agree with the Prime Minister on to a certain extent, is when, usually when things happen, I believe that there is responsibility that he's supposed to take, which I don't think he never did. But he kind of passed the buck on to everybody else, including people in society. But to a certain extent, I agree with him. I think that, it's interesting because when I mentioned this the other morning, somebody called in and they said, but Stephan, the gas price responsible for that. And then he kind of lost me for a few seconds, but then I understood. Because what I was about to tell you is that we have to look at it from a parenting standpoint, from an authority standpoint in terms of the teachers in the school and their responsibility to your children when they are under their care. And when we were talking about poor parenting and thing the other day, a man called and he said, well, the gas price responsible for that, Stephan. And I laughed. I said, well, how the gas price responsible for that? He said, because when you send up gas and cost of living goes up, right? And cost of living goes up, and then you're working for a salary that does not meet the cost of living, then you're not home enough. Now you have to work longer hours, maybe an extra job, in order to make ends meet. Because like you said, people just... neck right over the water like that.
That's right.
And you can't give the attention that you used to 40 years ago to your children.
That's right.
So when he explained it like that, I said, well, my brother, they call that the domino effect.
There.
And that is something that we don't pay attention to enough in the country. There are decisions that are made by people in power, by the people that we elect to lead us. And those decisions have consequences. And I'm sorry, but some of those decisions, they're going to affect people in a very negative manner. And then the politicians aren't held accountable. They come and they smile and they talk with you and they hold your child and they take a picture. And then we go back and we vote the same way. And we don't vote people on performance. And we need to change the mentality of the way that we approach. Look at what happened in the US. Donald Trump, despite everything they say about him, got 7% more votes from the African American in this election going here. I think he won the youth vote by over 30%.
Yeah, it was 30-something percent. Yeah, that's right.
So when you look at his first term and everything that took place during the first term based on the African American and the whole race issue and everything, how was Trump able to get 7% more African Americans to vote for him? Simple.
They had money in their pockets. That's it. He put money in their pockets. That's it.
Well,
that's it.
I mean, he did. But we're talking about the stimulus and thing.
But of course, but I mean, basically, his policies allow them to have money in their pockets. That's it. When Mia Mottley first came into office, she made it clear. She said, "Listen, we have some serious austerity measures here, but my first priority is to put money in your pocket."
Correct.
And that's it. That's how you kickstart your economy.
Because when the people at the bottom of the economic ladder have money, the economy turns. Because they're spending is the people at the bottom of the economic ladder, middle to bottom, is the ones that you see liming, spending money by the bars, going to the nightclubs and the parties, and they are the ones that do that more than, and that money that's circulating from the small man is vital to the economy. But when you don't have it, it stifles the economy.
No, you're not concerned about it. You're hoping that the rich has to get richer and there's some trickle-down economics. And then on top of that, you want to show everyone that you could act up for your back pay. None of your money should sleep out. And it's always about you. You're brave enough to tell your own base to wean off the government. So your interest was never about putting our interest as a priority. It was about yourself, your friends, your family, and your finances. Let's put it in the right perspective. That's what it is. At no point in time did anyone feel that this administration, led by Dr. Rowley / Stuart Young, was making any policy or any decision in their interest.
So many for this small man, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think a lot of people feel that way. And then I go back to the 4%. It was 4% for 6 years, right?
Yeah.
Right. But then on top of that, while you're creating these policies that are not in the favor of those at the bottom of the economic ladder, you come and you slap them in the face too now and you still a whole 4%. Which amounts to nothing, 4% of a public servant salary. I went through that to the PSA leader in an interview on my program. The man took about an hour and explained it and break it down. And when the man break down the numbers, it is really an insult to the public servant. You understand? And I mean, and sadly, these are the people that support that political party more than anyone else. I mean, if we're being real, right?
Yeah.
You also had the shutdown of the refinery. I know they're hoping on this dragon gas deal that the whole country knows absolutely no specifics about, with this non-disclosure agreement that they put on everything. And now you have Donald Trump coming in, and Trump, I mean, I'm waiting to see what moves he's going to
Well,
make.
I think that the new U.S. Secretary of State, Mr. Mark Rubio, I think he put everything, Rubio, in perspective. He made it quite clear. He doesn't even want to recognize the government in Venezuela. He said it's being run by a narcotic organization, and we're going after them. So that's it.
He said cartel, right? He said cartel.
He said narcotic organization. Yeah, and then he said, of course, cartel and what have you. And many of the Venezuelan gangs are now deemed to be terrorists.
Right. I mean, well, when you take that, when you use the term narcotic organization, right? And you listen in Trump inauguration speech, and he said that cartels, drug cartels, and I think he was speaking specifically to Mexico, will now be recognized as terrorist groups. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he said that in his speech. So, if they're looking at cartels and anybody dealing with drugs or narcotics and stuff, whether you term it as an organization or a cartel, he looking at them as some sort of terrorist group, and they will be treated as such. So, I mean, look, it's a lot of things are going to happen over the next few months, especially as it relates to what the new president of the United States position is to the neighbors on. Are you better off today than you were yesterday?
So
Are things getting easier in Trinidad and Tobago? And you have to be honest when the time comes to go to the polls, and you make your decision based on your standard of living, either getting better or being in decline.
Yeah, I think the bottom line is this: are you going to continue voting against your interests?
Correct. You have to make that decision for you, your children, and I mean, it cannot be a party card thing again. It can't be a race thing. We need to be colorblind as well when it comes to that. And we need to move forward as a nation based on merit and people's ability to perform.
Bottom line.
That they have been elected or selected to perform. And if it is, you are a PNM supporter, and your elected government is not working for you, call them out on it. Nothing in wrong with that. If you're a UNC supporter and you vote for UNC and Kamala Prasad returns as Prime Minister and she is not getting the job done, call her out on it. Nothing is wrong with that. You understand what I'm saying? Because you have to understand, they're eating ham, lamb, and jam, every day of the week,
Loud and clear.
How you live in is what matters, and they in charge of the public purse, and every decision that politicians make at the top is going to affect you either positively or negatively. Right. And if it is affecting you negatively, stop being a coward. Stop being petty with politics and just start talking the truth. People need to start being honest with themselves, their family, and this country.
Thank you.
Otherwise, we're going to be running around the savannah making circles for the next 10, 15, 20 years, and every other Caribbean island is going to surpass
Is going to
Trinidad
advance.
and Tobago.
That's right. Stephan, I want to thank you so much again for taking time out to link with us. Very insightful. And again, people, stop voting against your interests. Stop it. Stop it.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.